it'd be a deal breaker, but she has certain boxes checked that were first and foremost, and I'm sure that is getting paid to a certain extent. So I'm sure she lives her life, and as we know, she is not generally happy to do a lot of this whole first lady kind of action showing up. No, she'll sit in the background. I'm sure she'll hit the street shopping and live a very cush life because, hey, that's what she's in it for.
Yeah. Really fast. You feel free, yes or no, feel free to shut this down if you think that this is overly conspiratorial or doesn't make sense. Some people are saying the timing of this, especially coming out of the two debates where the topic of abortion didn't go, very well for the Republicans, and it's considered that it'll be a big part of the election. Maybe this is like the attempt to try to soften Trump's image, like, oh, I know what he's done, but like his wife is really vigorously in favor of these rights, so maybe he won't go much farther. What do you think about that theory?
I think it really depends on how much more political content is in the book, even though I don't think abortion is political at all. I think it's been politicized. But I would wonder how many other topics and issues that she talked about, and also how passionate she is. I think to a lot of women and individuals out there, abortion and having right to access it is something very near and dear to our hearts. At the same time, this woman generally doesn't tread into politics
Yeah,
without ensuring that her post-nup has been updated.
exactly. I don't know that I believe it, just because first of all, I think she cares about her book sales. I think that's her hobby. It's a rich person. I set up a boutique and now I care about the boutique. That's what I care about. I think that fully explains the behavior, but also I don't know that she'd want to help him. Why would she help him? Maybe she's being paid for it. I don't know, but anyway, okay. We're gonna jump in. We don't have a lot of time, but this is an important topic. I want to talk about one more thing and get your thoughts on this. Let's see. America has long been thought of as a very litigious society where everyone's always suing everyone else. But thanks to some tricky pizzicky moves by corporate America recently, there might be less lawsuits than there used to be. And you might be stopping yourself from engaging in even very necessary and justified lawsuits when you sign the terms of service for the different apps and services you use. And I want to talk about a family that was seriously injured in a car accident, finding out that they now cannot sue because their daughter ordered something through Uber Eats. You might have seen this going around, and I really want Adrian's thoughts on this. So this is John McGinty and Georgia McGinty. They were in the back of an Uber. This is March 2022. The driver sped through a red light and was T-boned by another car. So there's some gross negligence there. Georgia had serious injuries as a result of this. John had injuries as well. They tried taking Uber to court for a jury trial, but an appellate court recently ruled that they can't because they previously agreed to Uber's updated terms and conditions requiring arbitration rather than a jury trial, which are the same in the Uber Eats and Uber Ride app. Now they say they didn't sign that. It was their daughter, a minor, by the way, who used George's phone and agreed to Uber Eats terms of service, clicking a button that verified she was 18 years old. And the appellate court said that the company's terms are valid and enforceable. So because, look, again, there's going to be dispute as to who actually pressed the button, who actually did the thing. But they got this loophole where you can't sue us potentially years later because your daughter using a different app signed the terms of service. And a lower court had basically said that that's not justifiable. It's the appellate court that's like, no, it's enforceable. I personally think there's going to be this debate about who actually clicked the button, who actually signed the thing. I'm not that interested in that. I personally think a higher court, maybe the Supreme Court, if we had a sane Supreme Court, needs to step in and say, no, there are obviously limitations to what you can write into the terms of service. And this goes way beyond that. The one has nothing to do with the other. You don't get to avoid legal, like liability potentially just because somebody ordered, a hoagie a couple months earlier. I just think that that's insane. But Adrian, I am very curious about your far more expert thought.
I agree with you in terms of the level of insanity. I do think it's a very difficult thing for companies to navigate nowadays, in part because they don't necessarily know who clicks a button. And what if, let's say, even I clicked a button, but I brought a friend with me and they didn't click a button? Are they bound by that arbitration agreement? It's really difficult in this new day and age, and I think that the U.S. Supreme Court will have a lot on its plate. But I actually think it'll probably be easy to dispose of these issues, in part because they are so corporate friendly. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it always seems that our benches end up leaning toward what works in the best interest of a company or corporate conglomerate, as we're seeing in this situation here.
Yeah, I look, this sort of thing needs to be shut down. I know some people will say, like, well, you should read before you sign. I mean, come on. People have to sign so many things and they're so very long. Like, I think that is putting the onus on people to be responsible in a way that is very difficult rather than the corporations that are actually writing it up. I expect more out of them actually when it comes to responsibility. But there has been some progress in this. A lot of people are talking about how this is similar to what Disney did, whereas there had been a wrongful death lawsuit at one of its park restaurants, but the widow that involved had signed the Disney Plus terms and conditions. And again, how those things can possibly be connected makes no sense. Well, people were rightly incensed about this, and there was a lot of backlash. Disney has now announced that they're not going to be using that against the widow. So these companies can't be expected to be responsible, but if the outroar, like the uproar, I guess, both, you can do both, is enough, then maybe that can get them to act right when they're publicly shamed. So I don't know, maybe people can start tweeting about Uber because that might be the only way we get them to treat that couple right. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think this is all just really crummy how these corporations will try to hold you to these boilerplate type of terms and agreements that nobody can read that 9 size font. No one's going to also be able to read your legalese. Like it's just it's a total game now and it's disgusting.
100%. Well, it has been a delight having you on the program once again. Hopefully, we'll get to talk maybe right before, right after the election, get your thoughts about that. But thank you, as always, Adrian. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Much appreciated. And good seeing everybody.
Thank you. Everybody out there, thank you so much. We have one more show to close out the week. Brett Ehrlich will be here. We'll be throwing away our garbage people of the week. I've already got mine picked, actually. I mean, it could change, but the one that I have is really good. I can't wait to present it to you, and I can't wait for Brett Ehrlich to mock the people involved in it. So tune in tomorrow. For now, though, stay safe out there, stay sane out there, and we'll see you soon.
Welcome. It's indisputable. I'm your host, Rashad Richey. Good to be with you. We have a lot on the agenda today. Breaking down news of the day, none other than Yasmin Aliya Khan. Always fascinating to have her analysis. Got a lot for you. Top story of the day. Cops attempt to plant drugs inside of a man's car during a false DUI arrest. This story is going to make your blood boil. Let's go to the video. Here it is.
Not had any alcohol.
I have not.
Okay. Now, how about marijuana? Did you have had that?
Excuse me?
Marijuana?
I'm sorry? I didn't understand. What did you say?
I said, how about marijuana?
No.
No marijuana?
No.
Okay. Go and hang out right here for me. I don't think I have any. Yeah, you know, I had a stash in here somewhere. I don't even know where it's at. He's gonna refuse anyway.
I think it's a combination of the THC for sure. I didn't really evaluate them, but you can definitely see a pyramid for the THC, and then thinking his medications, prescribed medications, or something or two to amplify the effects of the thing.
I'm gonna take him.
What you hear is criminal corruption. What you hear are police officers engaging in criminal conspiracy against this individual. Put him up for a mass. Dakari Lariat says he was racially profiled, falsely arrested by Michigan state troopers who he accuses of trying to plant drugs in his car. The first Michigan state police officer who confronted Mr. Lariat during a traffic stop earlier this year accused the 42-year-old of being drunk, claiming He smelled like alcohol and specifically something fruity, end quote. Now, I want you to notice the pattern as I give you the story, because you will see that every police officer, regardless of race, was on the same page. Every police officer was down with the play, which also means that likely they have done this before. Same team, same play. This also speaks to the culture of corruption that permeates in law enforcement departments around these United States of America. The second cop number 2, convinced Laureate was under the influence of marijuana medication, an indication he never smelled alcohol, even though the video shows that that officer having a face-to-face conversation with Mr. Laureate. Quote, "We're trained to standard sobriety evaluations. We've had over 800 hours of that," the second cop, Matthew Akayi, boasted to Laureate. Quote, "In our professional opinion, due to our training experience, we don't believe you can operate that motor vehicle safely," end quote. However, their professional opinion was proven wrong by a blood alcohol test that indicated the victim here, Mr. Laureate, was not under the influence of alcohol. He was not under the influence of marijuana. He was not under the influence of mysterious medication. And body camera footage suggests that they may have even tried to plant drugs in his car. Laureate, who comes across as a soft-spoken and clear-headed individual in the video, was charged with operating under the influence of a controlled substance. Now, what do you hear in the video? What do you see in the video? You see officers being led by one particular cop, let's call this one the lead corrupt cop, goes to his stash. First of all, sir, are you on drugs? Do we need to drug test you? Why do you have a stash of drugs inside of your vehicle? What stash are we talking about? And why is it that it was okay for you to have a stash in the first place? Why is it that no officer there said, "Sir, put your hands behind your back, you're under arrest for attempting to effect a false arrest on a citizen of this country"? Why did that not happen? There's more. The prosecutors dismissed the case, quote, "due to lack of evidence and the unlawful nature of the stop and the arrest." They agreed with Mr. Laureate. The whole thing was against the law. According to a lawsuit Mr. Laureate filed Wednesday, quote, "The actions of the Michigan State police officers were part of a pattern and practice of racially discriminatory policing," wrote Attorney Simmons in the complaint obtained by Atlanta Black Star. The lawsuit accuses Michigan State Police of violating Laureate's Fourth Amendment rights, false arrest, and malicious prosecution. The incident took place at 3:10 a.m. This was on April 10th in Benton Harbor after Michigan State Police trooper Kenya pulled him over, claiming Laureate did not come to a complete stop at 2 flashing red lights, allegations that Mr. Laureate denied. Body camera video shows the officer mocking Mr. Laureate's license plate, which is made up of his first name, Dakaria. The name is an African name, and it originated from the Bantu language of Zimbabwe's Shona people. Quote, "You've been drinking daiquiris, my goodness," the officer yells, tells his partner before stepping out of the car and engaging with Laureate. Kanyu asks for Laureate's license, insurance, registration, and then poses the question if alcohol has impacted his ability to drive. Mr. Laureate says no. Quote, "When was your last drink? Has it been at least 2 hours?" the officer asks. Laureate says yes, but later in the video explains that it had been much longer than 2 hours, while clarifying He did, in fact, answer the question accurately. Okay. So he says yes, meaning, yeah, it's been more than 2 hours. He was honest. And proof of his honesty was the blood alcohol test. There's more. Quote, I can smell it on your breath, the officer tells him. Something fruity like, what were you drinking? There's no alcohol in here, Laureate responds. But the officer orders him out of the car and has him do multiple field sobriety tests, which, to the untrained eye, he appears to pass. But the cops claimed he made numerous mistakes. Now, the video that you saw is a snippet. It's a 50+ minute video, okay? They did everything they could to jam this person up in order to effect an arrest for absolutely no reason. It goes on. And Laureate says he is, when he was asked if he was on any medication, he said, yes, I'm on medication. When the cop poses the question, what type, Ms. Laureate declines to answer, telling the officer, I prefer to keep my medication private. It is his right to do so. The officer keeps peppering him with questions. He has a right to remain silent. He does not have to answer them, including asking him if he was under the influence of marijuana, which Mr. Laureate denies. That was when the officer walked to his car and appeared to be searching for something that Laureate believed, and I believe, and many of you believe, was drug paraphernalia and drug content to place inside of his vehicle. But his stash was empty. Why was his stash empty? Because he planted it on the last person. That's why. It's all gone. He didn't re-up on his drug planting stash. Why in the hell does a cop have a stash of drugs in his trunk? Because he's the guy who everyone goes to when they need to plant drugs on someone. See, he drives the vehicle that allows for that kind of interaction among law enforcement. See, he has their back when they make a mistake. And that's why all of those cops had his. This is speculation, my opinion, but I'm right. There's more. Searching for drugs to plant in his car. The video even goes back for several seconds as he's searching in his car. Quote, drugs? Okay, you ask, after walking up to the officer as he is searching his patrol car. I don't think I have any. The officer responds, I had a stash in here somewhere. I don't know where it's at. End quote. The cops transported him to a local hospital to get his blood drawn. Once again, he does have a right to have his blood drawn. Then to jail, where he says he was further humiliated by the officers after cops conducted an X-ray scan of his stomach and claimed to have spotted evidence that he smuggled drugs into the jail by ingesting them. Quote, it is clear that the troopers were planning to plant drugs in Plaintiff's vehicle and implicate him in a drug crime, as they also attempted to at the jail, the lawsuit states. The cops were so desperate to find drugs in his system that they even wanted to examine his feces, according to the claim. Now, I want you to think about how deep the corruption goes and how much they are willing to engage, how egregiously they are willing to engage in order to cover their tracks. They know Mr. Laureate has no drugs. They know this by now. He's passed the drug test. He doesn't have any drugs in his blood. Alcohol content stays in your system much longer than 24 hours. So when they are saying, well, it's in your stomach or feces, understand they're setting a prerequisite to possibly plant it there. Maybe put it in his food or force him to eat it. Possibly putting it in the feces itself and claiming that they found it later. This is all part of their program. Once again, speculation on my part. An extremely humiliating moment occurred when I was forced to defecate publicly while the trooper yelled at me, "Do not flush." Laureate told the Detroit Metro Times. Watch the 54-minute body camera on Laureate's YouTube channel or the shortened version edited at Atlanta Black Star. The lawsuit also describes an X account belonging to the officer that contained racist, homophobic, and misogynistic language. Remember, we talked about the isms all travel together, including one retweet of a photo of a Black woman captioned, quote, "Met the biggest beauty of a crackhead last night," and another retweet of a white man burning a Colin Kaepernick jersey. That account at GKANYUH has now been deleted. But Ms. Laureate gathered screenshots from the account, as well as screenshots from the other cops' account revealing tweets similar in nature. Quote, "Trooper George Michael Kenya is not shy about his bias and prejudices against gay people and Black people. A simple gander at his social media that was still up as of the writing is indicative of that," the complaint states. It's a culture. It's a culture. Obviously, the powers that be, they are aware. They know exactly what's happening, okay? Yasmin, this is one of the most sadistic stories you will hear, and you know it goes deeper than this. What say you?
This story just got worse and worse and worse. First of all, 800 hours of sobriety training feels like a lot. It's a little excessive. Most people can tell whether someone's under the influence without 800 hours of sobriety training. Maybe it's a lot more complex than I realized, but 800 hours feels like a waste of tax dollars. And then how are you going to brag about your 800 hours of sobriety training and then be so wrong about whether or not someone's sober? He wasn't wrong. He was lying. He was trying to make a point. Even if the cop knew he was lying to make that point, like, don't question me. I'm the cop. I know better than you do whether or not you're drunk. You're drunk if I say you are. It still makes the cop look and sound a little incompetent. But this is obviously, as he said, a concerted effort by the cops to make something out of nothing. And it's disconcerting and infuriating for all of the obvious reasons. But it's also upsetting because, as he pointed out, Doc, this clearly is not the first time that these cops have done something like this. So why do they think it's okay for them to behave this way? And why do they think that they'll get away with it? The answer is probably because they are likely to ultimately get away with it. And on top of that, there is the racist aspect of this and the humiliation of it all. They took his blood and then they took him to jail and then they did more things to him. They x-rayed him based off of absolutely nothing. That's such an invasion of someone's personal physical body. And it is a disgusting abuse of power, not just by the cops who were involved, but now by the entire police station. And people always love to tell Black people who are victimized by cops in this way to just comply. And I always wonder how the people who say things like that would react in a similar situation where a cop is telling them to do something ridiculous for no obvious reason or any legitimate reason on pain of possibly death. I wonder how it would feel, if a cop insisted on drawing blood based off of nothing. It's unbelievable. And it feels so helpless because it's like, at which point will we see, if ever, the necessary reform to law enforcement? I'm not hopeful because instead of seeing meaningful reform, we just see these police departments getting more and more public funds. This cop had a documented public history of being racist and homophobic. Why was he allowed to continue policing this community or any community? It's very disheartening.
Yeah, because the powers that be don't give a damn about the community they serve. That's the only answer. That's the only answer that would make sense. We're going to follow this story naturally. If this goes to trial, a lot of times they settle to stop the cops from testifying under oath. Okay, they settle to stop that from happening. But if this goes to trial and they are able to testify under oath, obviously you will see how deep the rabbit hole goes. We got more on the other side. I got to go to a quick break. It's indisputable. Stick and stay.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Idarola. This is gonna be a big one.
Meanwhile, in the Arctic, you know where this is going. You watch the Damage Report, the Arctic's on fire. Obviously, why would we be talking about the Arctic except to tell you that it's melting once again? The Republicans aren't that interested in it. I wonder why. Lift out of poverty up to 3.7 million people, including an estimated 1.3 million children. Hashtag save the children? Not if it costs money. I mean, come on.
At TYT, our mission is to boldly pursue truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. At a time when corporate capture of our media, our government, and our politics is nearly absolute, everyday working people need a champion to fight for them and to push back against the powerful interests that threaten our democracy itself. At TYT, we're proudly progressive and call out corruption and duplicity wherever we see it, from Republicans, Democrats, or anyone else. And unlike mainstream news media outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to big pharma. We only have to answer to our audience, and for nearly 2 decades, we've accomplished that by delivering honest, timely, and insightful perspectives on the day's news without fear or favor or concern for whose toes we might step on or which powerful elites we might offend. And while we're super serious about the news, we also manage to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We can do this together and serve our audience, and yes, have fun doing it.
Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show in America compared to CNN, Fox News, and 30 other networks. We tell the truth on Indisputable because the truth is indisputable. We go places that other news media outlets refuse to go. When there were human rights abuses happening at the Victorville prison, guards and members of the community contacted us.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
It really doesn't take much to be a trusted voice. All it takes is to be fearless, report on matters, be an advocate. I called it the bullpen intentionally because it's a place of preparation. We present individuals who may have an opposing view, so we debate. Sometimes we interview individuals because their stories deserve to be heard. A survivor of significant police misconduct and his attorney. We covered this story earlier and to remind you of the horror of one man being shot at damn near 100 times by the police. We take time on this show to showcase the temper tantrums of Karens in the wild. We do this not because we want to see people's emotional outbursts in public, but because these incidents are emblematic of a bigger societal issue taking place across the nation, and it has to be checked.
My friend, my big homie, attorney at law, Benjamin Crump.
I just want to thank you, man. Educated, articulate brothers like yourself speak truth to power. It makes a great difference in changing the landscape in America. So
listen, no matter what you do, don't allow the politics of ideology to evaporate the soul that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform, so I won't stop. You won't stop either. All right, welcome back. Lot of show left. Always good to be with you. Okay, What if I told you that a man decided to attack a woman because she put a VP Kamala Harris sign, a flyer, in his mailbox? Well, that's what happened. He got arrested, put it up for a mask. This is what we're dealing with. A 61-year-old white male Michigan man is facing charges after an apparent racially motivated attack on a Black female mail carrier who tried to put a legal political flyer in his mailbox. The flyer was in support of Kamala Harris. Russell Frank Ballou is scheduled to return to court for a preliminary hearing. According to investigators, Russell Frank of Farmington Hills became enraged when he observed the high crime of the carrier delivering the vice president's campaign card and marched up to her with a knife, saying, quote, he did not want that Black B word in his mailbox. So he believes that people can fit inside of his mailbox, and he didn't want that to happen. This is the kind of finite thinking you're dealing with. The individual was arraigned on September 27th on charges of felony, ethnic intimidation, and misdemeanor assault and battery. He pleaded not guilty, was jailed, and kept on the $25,000 bond. That's according to the reports. If convicted, he could face up to 2 years in prison and a $5,000 fine. During the confrontation, Russell Frank allegedly unleashed a barrage of racist and sexist slurs aimed at Harris and the letter carrier, calling her a Black B word before charging at her with the blade, police said. The woman became afraid and defended herself with pepper spray. And Mr. Russell Frank stumbled away while she ran to safety. Farmington Hills police showed up later, took him to, down to the neighbor's yard, took him to jail. So a statement from the Oakland County prosecutor, Karen McDonald, quote, in this highly charged political moment, everyone has a right to their political opinion and vote, she said, according to ABC News. Whatever our political beliefs, no one should be assaulted or threatened because of their race or for doing their job. Hate crimes impact us all. We will vigorously pursue all such cases. A statement from the police chief, his name is Jeff King, put him up. So Chief King says, the Farmington Hills Police Department is dedicated to preventing attacks based on race, gender, or political affiliation. Such conduct is not tolerated in this great community, and the Farmington Hills Police Department will use every resource to bring offenders to justice, ensuring the community remains a safe and welcoming place for all people. You know, he attacked a mail carrier, which means he attacked specifically an employee of the government. There's no mention of this in the statements provided by law enforcement or by the prosecutor. Typically, you want to make sure that your systems of democracy, and yes, our mail delivery system is part of our system of democracy. It's called early voting or ballot voting by way of absentee. Okay. Mail carriers are in charge of that part of the democracy process. So it's interesting to me how none of them, I mean, no statement mentions the protection of democracy, the protection of political speech. You know, the reason why the mail carrier has that political mailer is because political speech is protected by the U.S. Constitution. Where are the constitutionalists at? Where are you? I thought you enjoyed the element of free speech because political speech is part of that. That's the reason why campaigns get the right, yes, the right to come to your community, knock on your door. It's not considered loitering. trespass or solicitation. It falls outside of those normative rules because it is a constitutional right to have political speech. Now, if you tell them to get the hell off your property, they have to go. But they can be in your community. Not the prosecutor, not the cop. None of them said a word about protecting democracy, mail carriers, government workers. They made general statements. I'm looking for the there. That is an important distinction. And then to go out of your way as a prosecutor to say, well, everybody's entitled to their political opinion, and this is a very, very tense political moment. Why would you say this? Let me give you another example. If this was a gangster, right? Let's say an 18-year-old immature kid who claimed Pyru, and he had a knife and he went up to a government employee. Would you say, I know it's rough out here for young kids. I know it's tough. They don't have the opportunities that we should give them. Would you start your statement that way, prosecutor? Of course not. Because you have no context for the 18-year-old, but you have significant context for this grown-ass man that should know better. All right, Yasmin, thoughts here?
Yeah. There's a local group around here that goes canvassing, and they always invite me to go, and I never go. And I know that they vet the houses that they visit, and I know that outreach like that can really make a huge difference when it comes to influencing elections, especially local elections, which are so important. And I'm always telling people, you got to vote local. But besides the fact that I'm not about to be walking out here in this Texas heat, I'm not messing with any of these people. You never know who you're going to encounter. And compared to a few years ago, maybe even a few decades ago, people are decidedly more unstable and more unhinged than they used to be. And maybe, I try to keep it in perspective. Maybe that is a perception thing on my part, because I do understand that it's one thing to read about these stories on the internet, and it's another thing to actually engage with your community and with your neighbors. But people really don't know their neighbors like they used to anymore. And I think that that is part of why we're seeing all these incidents cropping up more and more, or maybe we just know about them more and more. But we don't interact with one another the way we used to. We maybe see our neighbors now on our way from our front door to our cars, but we're not having these meaningful relationships with the people that we live near. And, me living in this neighborhood, I see the Trump flags and I see the Trump stickers on all the trucks. And I know that these people have guns. So no, thank you. And I love that you pointed out how this is such an integral and classic component of our system of government, interacting with the people, canvassing, stumping, etc. This is old school democracy. This type of behavior really feels like an interruption of the political democratic process. It feels like obstruction. It's not organized obstruction, at least regarding the man's actions against the woman with the flyer, but it is like the fact that nobody is doing anything about this type of behavior, and that they're kind of forgiving it and saying, it's just the way things are these days. No, this feels like election interference. If somebody was behaving that way at a polling location, that would be a big problem, or it should be a big problem. And hopefully, going into November, there are some safeguards put up there so that people feel safe going to these polls.
That's right. Well said. We went down this rabbit hole before, where workers who don't get paid a whole lot of money, they work seasonally, their whole lives were turned upside down. So hopefully we do better by them this time. All right, a man medically suffering a seizure, gets body slammed by a cop rather than getting the medical attention needed, and dies. Put up the picture full mass. An Indiana deputy told an epileptic man, quote, "We're trying to help you," before body slamming him to the ground, handcuffing him during a deadly arrest. This was a medical call. And this is how the cop responded. Family members of the Indiana man who died after an encounter with local authorities say the body camera footage of the incident does not fully depict what actually happened the night their loved one died. Here's some of the body cam.
So I said, I'm going to stay home. I'm going to stay with you.
Hey, don't, medic. You're going to the hospital, all right? You don't, you understand? You don't. Sit on the ground. Put your hands behind your back. Please. Please. Got it? Please. Yep. Please.
Riker Earl died after deputies and first responders were called to a Jasper County home on September 8th. They were called there to render medical aid. They were called there to save a life. They were called there to preserve a life because the man had suffered multiple seizures that day alone. He had a tough day. And at some point during the encounter, Earl was restrained on the floor by deputies with his face in a pillow. Family members said he became unresponsive in the minutes afterward and was pronounced dead 2 days later at a local hospital. His family said that he was in a hostical state, which impacts a person's mental ability, the state of awareness after they suffer a seizure. A person can become confused or more easily agitated, can also respond differently to medications. Quote, I have watched him have 50 seizures, Earl's sister, Tara, told WTHR. It takes him up to 15 minutes to come back to himself after a seizure. I've had to remind him of who I am. I'm going to die, Earl is heard shouting at first responders who were called to the home after his grandmother called 911. Quote, you're not going to die, a deputy tells Earl. We're trying to help you. You have to admit at this point, regardless of your faith belief, your faith background, how many times have we reported right here on Indisputable of an individual saying to the cop, you're going to kill me. I don't want to die. Just to have that very thing happen to them minutes later. This is another one. Family members said the medics gave Earl at least 4 shots of ketamine while he was on the floor. A medic is seen in the video immediately administering CPR before first responders rushed Earl to a nearby hospital. 2 days later, he was removed from life support after tests showed he had no brain activity. After releasing the body cam footage, the sheriff's office stated that it is not drawing any conclusions about the actions of anyone involved in this incident. The independent investigation would draw those conclusions. All of a sudden, the police have no opinion. Autopsy results are still pending. And Indiana State Police are investigating what happened. Civil rights attorney, dear brother and friend Ben Crump, who was representing Earl's family, attributed the 26-year-old's death to failure of duty. Failure of duty on part of the authorities who arrived to handle the situation at hand. Let's put up this picture. Earl leaves behind a 6-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter. Keep his picture up. He should be alive today. He should be alive today. His sister has witnessed him have 50 seizures. Guess what? She didn't kill him. She managed to get through those seizures without killing him. As a matter of fact, everybody, family, friend, stranger, coworker, associate, teacher, everybody managed to not kill him, except the police, except the individuals who you're actually paying to preserve his life. This is why we have to work as a coalition. Because if they will knock on your neighbor's door, damn it, they'll knock on yours. All right, Yasmin, a sad story. Thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously such a waste, especially when you find out that he leaves kids behind and loved ones, obviously. Look, if you're not qualified to help people, don't do a job that requires that you help people. If you're not good under pressure, if you can't make tough calls under tense situations, then don't do a job that requires any of that of you. Because the people who are going to suffer for it, for your just being bad at your job, are people like this guy. And he, unfortunately, the extent of that suffering is death for the other person. You know, body slamming someone in the middle of a seizure, demanding that he follow orders, like putting his hand behind his back while he literally cannot control his own body, especially when the cop knew that he could not control his own body, is stupid. There's no other word for it. It's so stupid. It reeks of someone who has such a fragile ego that he can't handle it when someone doesn't comply with his demands. So he tried to force someone in the middle of a seizure into compliance. That is not how you control a situation. The cop's job in that type of situation is only to control the situation and to manage it and make sure that everybody is okay, everybody gets what they need and gets to where they need to go. He needed a hospital. He needed some kind of paramedic to get him from the house to the hospital. Instead, he ended up body slammed with his face on a pillow. Like, how does that make any sense? And it's really sad because none of it needed to happen.
Totally avoidable with the right professional responding. We're gonna bring you updates as they come. We got more on the other side. It's indisputable. Stick and stay.
Our audience has given us everything, so we couldn't be more connected. When we first started, people would start giving us directions and say, okay, the mics are too large, move them. Turn them into lav mics. I mean, they were incredible. And then one guy walked in and gave us a really expensive switcher and said, you guys need this, and walked out. Okay, it's amazing. They helped us build a studio. They did a $2 million funding campaign for us. And so they really are us. We do this show together to the point where some of our hosts are even former listeners. So when we say that the audience is part of TYT, we really mean it.
I think what the audience also appreciates is especially if they're members, they really get an inside look into who we are, our personal lives, what drives and motivates us. It goes beyond just storytelling. I think that what we do is allow our viewers and our listeners into our daily lives, and we give them kind of like this inside look into everything that we're passionate about and why it is that we're doing what we're doing, right? Like the motivation behind what we're doing, I think, is important for our audience to know, and we're not shy about sharing that with them. And it's different from what people typically see in legacy media outlets where everything is kind of dry and robotic and there's really no personality or authenticity that comes along with it. Oftentimes when we're doing the show, I don't really think of it as me telling them stories. I think of it as us having a mutual respect and conversation with one another. And as I said earlier, I mean, not only do I feel that through the work I do, I'm informing our audience, but they inform me oftentimes as well. You know, they'll pitch stories to us. They'll tell us, you know, a certain perspective or angle to a story that we might have missed. And I love it.
How in the world are you going to get the right to vote if you don't already have the right to vote? That's impossible. Reason they tell you things are impossible is because they don't want you to try. It only took 7 years for them to get an amendment to get a right to vote.
Does this result in millions upon millions of Americans losing their coverage? And we've been waiting to find out, and now we know, yes, it will cut millions.
Public education was supposed to be the way to equalize everyone regardless of their socioeconomic status. But if you come from a family that's poor, how are you going to afford grade school for your kids?
This fight is about fairness and morality. It's about the American values.
You think that black people all across the country, in every city, were all lying when they said the police abuse us and the police kill us when they should? No, of course they weren't lying. Yes, it does happen. Yes, they do get targeted more.
Why are we going to put immigrants in prison for 5 years, which American taxpayers have to pay for, if we're so concerned with immigrants using up our so-called resources?
We're going to do both. We're going to fight Trump and we're going to fight the establishment. It is not that hard. Yes, you can do both at the same time. Go tell them.
Tell me about the shirt you're wearing.
Pretty much speaks for itself. What's the penalty for treason? Death. Everything was phenomenal under Donald Trump, and now it's Obama calling the shots right now. It ain't Biden.
So it's Obama calling the shots?
I believe so. None of this would be happening if they hadn't stolen the 2020 election from Trump and we the people.
If you could have an option of 4 years of Donald Trump as a dictator or 4 years of Joe Biden as a president, what would you choose?
Donald Trump.
All right, welcome back. A lot of show left. Let me read some of these amazing comments. Very thankful for everybody joining the conversation. Okay. We have a technical issue. All right, no comments right now. All right, we'll come back to the comments in just a moment. We got a big announcement to make, okay? So I'll make sure we make that announcement during the program. It's a big congratulations to the team and to you. Got something for you. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish a Karen would.
You want to call the police on them for having a barbecue on a Sunday.
I feel free! Back off! I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
You get in the back of the line. Get in the back of the line.
I know you
So what are you doing here now?
Because there's nobody here.
And so we were waiting, and you just go right around. It was open because the person behind was getting done.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a rare Karen on Karen situation here in the wild. We do not get to witness such a rare occurrence. There's more.
Behind was getting done and gonna move out. That's the way it works here in America. Close your door.
Someone call the police. Can you call the police?
Yeah. Put up the picture full mask. Nothing says this is going to be a Karen situation like Sam's Club, gas, and ponytails. Ladies and gentlemen, this happened inside of a Sam's Club parking lot where the gas station is, according to the Post. I cannot see a clear non-Karen in this video. Both individuals seem to be in equal parts engaged in Karenicity. All right, Yasmin, how do you call it?
What did she say? This is how things work in America. Is any of this worth it? I have no idea what is happening or why any of this was necessary. Like, was there a gas shortage? Like, where was this? Was this in Florida or Georgia or North Carolina? Someplace hit by the hurricane? Because that'll make people a little crazy. But they were all up in each other's space. They were grabbing gas pumps from each other. There's probably gas flying everywhere. What a disaster. Gross. I hate it.
Yeah, And we know this, it's another damn pump.
There's another.
We know that.
Just go to another pump. Just
There
wait.
you go. All right. Okay. Horrible situation. A white farmer runs over a black child, crushes his legs, is not remorseful at all. Put up the picture full mask. Just put him on full display since he's proud of his actions. South African farmer Christoffel Johannes Stoneman has caused outrage after he ran over a 6-year-old child because of a piece of fruit. an act he has zero remorse for. The incident happened on September 20th, when the child and his mother, Magdalene Gentagis, who's pictured, were on their way to do food shopping. They walked by Stoneman's smallholder farm. The child reportedly picked up one orange off the ground. When he reached through a fence to grab a second orange that had fallen off the tree, Stoneman came from around the corner, slammed his vehicle into the mother and into the child, pinning them against the fence. The mother told reporters, quote, "He came from around the corner and he was driving at a speed. He shouted, 'Stand there, stand there.' I thought he was going to stop. He aimed directly at us in the corner and I screamed, 'Help, help,'" recalled the mother, the horrified mother. He said, "I'm going to kill you by driving into you." So he tells them to stand there. The mother assumes he's saying stand there because I'm going to avoid hitting you by going the other way. So she stands there. The child trusts that the mother is safe and that the location is safe. But what he's doing is telling them where to stand so he can get a better aim at his attempted murder. That's what I'm calling it. My opinion, it was attempted murder. I want you to see these x-rays. The child suffered severe injuries, including 2 broken legs. He had to be rushed to the local hospital and then transferred to a larger hospital outside of Cape Town for emergency surgery. In the wake of the tragedy, Stoneman allegedly has shown no remorse, telling police, quote, he would do it again, reported the ENCA. He now faces 2 charges of attempted murder and a charge of reckless and negligent driving, per the Daily Mail. On September 30th, he requested bail from the magistrate court. According to the National African Youth League, this is the latest incident in Stoneman's long history of unchecked aggression. In a September 26th press release, a Black nationalist organization accused Stoneman of repeated brutality against vulnerable community members that have gone unpunished for far too long, pointing to Stoneman's rumored connections with local law enforcement. This time, the state has opposed bail for Stoneman, according to ENCA. Quote, "We visited the crime scene, and there is no way that this boy could have gained access to the orchard over the fence." So in other words, the story, the narrative from the mother and the child is completely accurate. There's no way this could have happened any other way, given what law enforcement saw in their investigation. There's more. Eric Tubazali, National Prosecuting Authority, NPA spokesperson, said last week to the news outlet, the suspect should answer in the court of law for his reckless behavior. Stoneman's bail hearing is set for tomorrow, all right, October 4th. We're going to stay on top of that, the Daily Sun reported. Stoneman's wife and brother-in-law testified on his behalf on Monday, with his wife claiming that he did not intend to harm the boy, according to her. She told the court that the child's mother declined their help and then left the child behind at the scene before returning with the police. She denies that her husband threatened to run over the mother and the child. Now, see, this is the enabling that the organization was talking about. He's been protected. They've lied and lied and covered to where he believed he was above the law. And hell, who knows? Maybe he operated above the law to an extent. But now you have an international story. And if it's true, if what the organization said is true, and there are authorities locally there who decided to protect this madness, the injuries and the suffering and the mental anguish that this mother and this son are experiencing part of that is on you because you let him go unchecked in your community. All right, we're going to follow this all the way through. Yasmin, thoughts here?
Yeah, South Africa is really just being so South African right now. And it's disappointing, but perhaps not unexpected. I think we tend to forget in this modern era when news and ideas move so quickly, we can't even remember what happened last week. But because things move so quickly, we kind of tend to forget that apartheid was not that long ago in South Africa. In the grand scheme of history and historical movements, it just happened. Like systemic legal racism just happened in South Africa. Apartheid was only abolished in, I think it was the mid-90s in my lifetime. And this farmer looks much older than me, looks much older than you, Dr. Richey. He lived during those apartheid times and he seems like he misses the good old days, right? Here in the US, we had slavery and then we had a civil war in the mid-1800s. Then we had segregation, then we had Jim Crow laws in the South, and we are still dealing with racial injustice and racism in this country. This kind of thing does not go away overnight, not even over the course of decades or centuries. I will say, though, there is a bit of a distinction when this type of thing happens in South Africa versus when it happens over here, because in South Africa, the white people are only there because they colonized that African land. The African people were there, and then the white people came in, colonized them, and then discriminated against them and oppressed them on their own land. At least over here, the Black people and the white people are both non-native, so it's a little different. But we are seeing, as far as what's similar, we are seeing the same kind of non-responsiveness from the people in charge, right? Nothing is ever going to get better if the people who are behaving this badly and this discriminatorily and this unapologetically are getting away with it with, little more than a slap on the wrist.
Yeah, there you go. We're going to make sure that doesn't happen this time. All right. What if you have lived to 93 years of age, paid your dues, right? All of a sudden, you got an eviction notice. No fault of your own. Put up the picture full mass. 93-year-old California woman is being evicted after her building was sold to a developer. I'm going to explain the rule that allows this. Andrea Perez, 93, is devastated. Miss Perez is devastated as she packs up all of her belongings. These are things she has accumulated for over 4 decades. Quote, "I feel very sad, end quote. After calling this rent-controlled fourplex home since 1984. Ms. Perez is being forced to leave, not for failing to pay rent, but because the building was sold to a new developer. Along with her daughter and her grandson, who live next door in the same complex, she now faces eviction. Quote, "This has been my home for 40 years, says the 93-year-old. Perez's grandson, Marcel Bourbon, shares the frustration many tenants are facing. He says, quote, "We're being evicted through no fault of our own, just some company can make a buck off our living situation," end quote. The developer is using what's called the Ellis Act. The Ellis Act is a California law initially intended to allow small landlords to retire by evicting tenants in rent-controlled units. However, corporations and developers are now taking advantage of this law, pushing long-term tenants out to replace them with higher-paying ones, which, by the way, is antithetical to the entire reason you created the laws in the first place to protect the tenants in rent-controlled environments. According to the tenants, the LA Tenants Union, this is becoming increasingly more common throughout Los Angeles. Tenants from across LA gathered to protest this week. Andrea Perez also voiced her concerns about the skyrocketing prices, the rent. She said $4,000, $6,000. That's a lot of money for one apartment. With little time left, Andrea and her family must vacate their home by October 25th. We want to help them as much as we can. A GoFundMe has been created, has been launched for Andre and those looking to help. A link will be available with this video. So when we post a video, we'll put the link inside of the information. So just make sure you find it there and provide what support you can. If you can't provide support, provide a positive thought or prayer. Yasmin, one of the greatest lies people are told in this nation and beyond is that there's not enough. The second biggest lie is we're going to run out. There is enough, and we're not going to run out of anything. We're not. There are enough resources. The reason why it feels like there's not enough, and they create this narrative and they frame the debate or the argument, is because they want more than what anyone else wants. And so it makes it seem as if it's not enough of the pie left to split. Yasmin, thoughts?
It's a false sense of scarcity, right?
Yeah.
And whenever you live in that state of mind where, you have to, it's capitalism, right? Everything with capitalism is growth, right? You have to just keep accumulating more and more and more. And then you do other things with that money once you get it. And then you build more and more and more. There is no upward ceiling when it comes to capitalism. If you do hit a ceiling, you're bad at capitalism, right? If you are owning investment properties or development properties, you are doing capitalism. You're actively doing it. And so the only thing that matters with capitalism is the profit. And the only thing that matters is the bottom line. And people like this 93-year-old woman, she's just a casualty. That's not the developer's problem, right? It's not his problem where she goes or who takes care of her, where she lives. It doesn't matter, right? Because that's not how you do capitalism. And, when you're 93 years old, you shouldn't have to worry about being suddenly homeless for any reason, because our society should be taking care of people like this. This is incredibly sad, but this is the reality that we live in when people don't own anything anymore. We have no rights, no property, no say over where we live, no say over, whether or not they decide to raise a rent, however arbitrarily they decide to do that. It doesn't matter whether or not she's lived there for 40 years. It's just a property to the developer, but to her, it is her home. And I think that's the underlying problem with stories like this one. In this country, we see housing as a piece of property, as a means of earning more capital. It is a piece of capital. It is an asset, right? But really, housing is a home, right? That's where people live. That is security. We love to complain about the houselessness crisis in this country. We have houses, we have places to put them, there is property that has been developed. And, I think about this a lot because here in Texas, they love to develop land and they love to, make new kinds of housing and things like that. But whenever you drive around, all you see are people cutting down all the trees and paving over our floodplains. And we see a whole lot of empty, abandoned buildings that are just sitting there empty. And it's like, just do something with that stuff. And I know it's more complicated than that or whatever. There's always an excuse as to why this or that can't happen and why this needs to happen. But ultimately, the answer is they're developing new land because more people get paid more money if they do it that way versus the other way, which would be a lot better, not just for the people, not just for the communities, but also for the environment, just all around. So, like I said, I think about this stuff a lot and I hate it. I hate what's happening.
People say it's tough. It's not that tough. You can do right and do well at the same time.
You can do whatever you want to do. You can always figure out a way to get it done.
That's right. It takes intent. We got more on the other side. It's indisputable. Stick and stay.
I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm at a Wolfpack gathering.
We're growing. I see faces that I recognize, but I also see a lot of faces that I don't recognize, and that's fantastic.
We are all taking time out of our lives to be here, and that's amazing. That means we truly believe in this. Make no mistake, everyone in this room is a leader in a Wolfpack.
Alaska, West Virginia, Montana, Georgia, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, everyone is here. All these folks paid with their own money and sometimes took vacation days to come here to strategize on how to get our democracy back and get money out of politics.
Or you get more political power just because you have more money. This is why it requires a constitutional amendment.
The process of winning in your state next year doesn't begin when session begins. It begins right now. to work to a goal, something this big that you're actually making a difference of, there's very few things in the world that really compare to that feeling.
Equal rights to fair representation, rights for human beings, anti-corruption laws, and free and fair elections. That's what we are fighting for.
What were the founding fathers? Revolutionaries. And they built revolution into the document.
So Article 5 is the way we have to go.
This is how you do it.
You're in this as a team, you're in this together. The fight will always continue.
That fight is not between the left and the right. That fight is between basically greed and humanity.
So I'm asking you to put differences aside, whether you're conservative or independent or progressive, to join forces to say no more corruption.
You get beyond the fear, you take that first step, and you'll change the world.
What I want to leave you with, of course, is hope. And I want to assure you that if we keep fighting together, we're going to win together. We're going to get that convention, we're going to get that amendment, and we're going to get our democracy back. Come join us, wolf-pack.com.
At TYT, we depend on our audience to help us deliver the news and try to fight for positive change. We've been doing that for 22 years because of you guys. So now, because of our new campaign, there's some awesome perks that come along with supporting the Young Turks and to get us through this storm. That's why, for example, one of the perks is the Riders in the Storm t-shirt. There's other fun things like me leaving a voicemail for you guys. And then there's bigger ones where you could name items in the office or the studio. Some of you have already done that, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Tracy Rager named Anna's gavel Charlie Rules after her dog. That's so sweet. Thank you, Tracy. Jeffrey Manzer named my studio light. I look so pretty now because of Jeffrey, but that's what I love. That's how connected we are to our audience. That's why we're one of the few digital media companies that have survived so far. So if you want to help, go to tyt.com/perks. And you really are part of our team when you come and help, because we can't do this without you guys. But with you guys, we are too strong.
A famous new author has a book out. His name is Dogan Uger. That's my dad. Okay, the name of the book is called The Original Young Turk, and it's his life story. I read it, trust me, you're gonna love it. He has such a straightforward way of telling stories that you're gonna be amused by it. It's like, wow, then I met JFK, then I was at the White House, then I started a business, then I became Businessman of the Year. It's amazing. You're gonna love the stories, and it's part of what made me progressive. Check it out at shoptyt.com.
I really love what y'all do on the Young Turks, man, and it's a very refreshing, voice. Y'all don't lean to one side. I tell people all the time, if you want to go really hear what's going on honestly in our society, you should tune in to the Young Turks.
Thank you, Charlemagne. We appreciate that.
That's awesome. Really appreciate it, brother.
All right, welcome back. Always good to be with you. We got a lot of great comments. Before I read those comments, let me say a big congratulations to my production team, to TYT Network, to all of our remarkable co-hosts, contributors, and especially to you. I'm proud to announce that Indisputable has won the best news and politics podcast nationally at the Black Podcasting Awards. Very thankful for the acknowledgement and really thankful for every single one of you. You are the reason that the engine is able to run. All right. So bottom top of my heart, thank you. Love you. All right. We got a lot of comments. Havar Ellis, welcome back, Dr. Richard, looking fresh, but that's how you got to come back, Let me give a big shout out to Albany State University. I was lecturing there in neurophysics and had a great opportunity to share with the students. Very beautiful group of young, brilliant minds, all right? I look forward to coming back. Always big ups to Dr. Wilson and the entire ASU team. Go Rams. 36 Chambers Dragon, I personally see a corrupt gang harassing an innocent man, plain and simple, talking about the cops that tried to plant drugs. That's right. The blue suit doesn't change the intent of heart. Malicious intent in the criminal justice code is talking about what's inside of you. That blue suit don't change what's inside of you. So you are absolutely correct. Jay, the okayest mailman. Come on now, Jay. Love the comment. Oh, he attacked a postal worker? Question mark. That's a hell no. We don't choose the mail you get. Don't like it, throw it away. That's right. That's right. You don't get more innocent than literally being the person that's paid to transfer mail. Dex, I'm talking about the man who had the seizures. He would have fallen asleep if the cops had just left him alone. This is yet another sickening example of compliance with the police having dire consequences. And remember, he had 4 shots of a drug that could be lethal. So you're right. At a point, chemistry sets in. Human physiology is a factor. But they couldn't wait for that. They had to go ahead and kill him. Next TYT reporter. What do you mean you didn't mean to hurt the child? You ran him over. What other intended effect is there from running someone over, especially a small child? And then they tried to make it seem like the mother is the reason all this happened, and the attempted murderer was trying to save their lives. You talk about spin. They probably didn't even talk about the story prior. She just knew what to say. We got one more. Well, a few more. Gabby Mathis, gifted 5 indisputable memberships. Thank you so much for that. Greatly appreciate you. US underscore combat underscore vet member for 4 months. Looking good, Doc. Glad to have you back. Yes, did. Fantastic holding it down. She sure did. So very thankful for our dear sister and her remarkable commentary. Snack Panther, gifted 5 indisputable memberships. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate you as well. And Ghost Dog TV, give me some of those flies. I know how to fight. And Il Kick. Doc is showing behind the curtain of how corrupt cops are in the Midwest. Yeah, and beyond. All right. Okay, here we go. The DOJ, Department of Justice, has now finally officially opened an investigation into the Tulsa Massacre. We have been studying, going over this, reporting from day one. Here's what happened during that time as a reminder.
The residents of Greenwood try to defend their neighborhood, but they don't have a chance. The National Guard sprays the residents with machine gun fire, and it gets worse.
You have something new up in the air, and it's airplanes start flying over Greenwood. There is evidence, and I believe this firmly, that at least on one of the airplanes, a co-pilot is dropping sticks of dynamite down on Greenwood.
The airplanes was up, just raining down the bullets. And I could see them, and I heard them, and I was so frightened.
Greenwood is left a smoldering ruin. 9,000 people left homeless. The dead uncounted. Estimates range from 75 to 300. Eldoris lived until 2010. Her granddaughter, Joy McConaughey, keeps her story alive.
Court case after court case. Judicial denial after judicial denial. Insurance companies were so heartless that literally in the insurance fine print, if your establishment was destroyed because of a race riot, there's no insurance coverage for you. They got nothing. It was a community that said, we will build our own homes. We will educate our doctors. We will provide. We will provide the agriculture necessary for the community. It was a self-sustaining ecosystem. It's a very beautiful thing. It wasn't the only one. Don't let anyone trick you to say there was only one. There were many. A whole lot of them you'll never hear about. Here's your update. Put it up full mass. More than 3 years after President Biden first vowed to repair Greenwood, attorneys for the two last known living survivors, which means they have stake, they have claim here. These individuals, last two known living survivors, announced that the Department of Justice has opened a federal review into the Tulsa Race Massacre. For years, the Justice for Greenwood legal team has been calling for the first ever federal DOJ investigation into the city-sanctioned racial domestic terror attack, which resulted in white mobs killing upwards of 300 Black men, women, children from May 31st through June 1st, 1921. I want you to understand a clear distinction between what these individuals did and what they will say a common criminal would do, okay? The common criminal typically, as they will categorize it, has context for criminality, meaning they've been exposed to significant crime. They have been raised around an atmosphere conducive to survival methodology. They have been indoctrinated and desensitized to particular acts of violence because this violence has been visited upon them or they have seen it through their experiences, exposures, and environments. But many of these individuals did not have that particular pretext, but all of them turned into murderers that day. They went to Bible study. They taught classes. They were pilots. They were lawyers. They were police officers. All of them turned to murderers. And one day, you got to understand that's a different type of psychology. For years, the Justice Department, the Justice for Greenwood legal team, they've been calling for the first ever DOJ investigation, right? So previously, the Tulsa County District Court and the Oklahoma Supreme Court, we reported on this, they denied 110-year-old Viola Ford Fletcher, 109-year-old Leslie Benningfield Randall, the opportunity for a trial. No trial here. Leading attorney Solomon Simmons to reiterate calls to the Biden administration to open an investigation. Civil rights attorney Demario Solomon Simmons said during a press conference on Monday, quote, "I'm so excited to announce that this morning, Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights Kristen Clark announced that the United States federal government Department of Justice will open a review and evaluation of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. We also met with Vice President Kamala Harris, who's now running for president. We met with her in DC. She said she stood with the survivors, and today the Biden-Harris administration is standing with the survivors, and we're thankful for that." He said the DOJ officials would be reviewing evidence and testimonies over the coming weeks with the goal of releasing a report on Tulsa by the end of the year. It's the first step in a process under the Emmett Till Unsolved Civil Rights Crimes Act passed in 2008. The law gives the Department of Justice and the FBI the authority to jointly investigate unconstitutional crimes that took place before 1979, okay? Doesn't extend statute of limitation specifically. It does provide a damning narrative if investigated properly. The federal government does have the right to always create a reparations package. Never believe that America is against reparations. They love reparations. They give reparations to a whole lot of people. A whole lot of groups have received reparations. They're just typically against reparations when it comes to Black people. So they are able, if they see that this injustice was done by way of governmental officials, which we know it was, that the government has to make it right. And that there is civil penalty, especially in the world of PR, for the private companies who decided to acknowledge and agree with what happened to that Black community by not restoring them as they should have. Yasmin, still is really bittersweet because All of their court cases have been denied, and the federal government basically refused to step in until they had zero judicial remedy left.
Yeah, this sort of harkens back to the previous story when I was saying, these types of things take a very, very long time to see reckonings within society because they require a change of heart amongst the same people who were previously perpetuating and defending the previous status quo. Those are the people who can do something about certain injustices. And even though everyone can see that there was an injustice committed, which is an understatement, by the way, it doesn't matter until the people in power get there. This incident happened over 100 years ago. The people who were there are dead, except for 2 people. There was little hope that anything would happen after the last survivor died, because why would a community remedy a situation that happened 100 years ago? We know what they say. It's the same thing that they say all the time. Well, I didn't do it. I wasn't there. Why should I fix anything? I didn't break it. Why is it my responsibility? But the answer, justice has to be served. And until it is served, there is no healing. An entire community has to live with the knowledge of what happened there and with the knowledge that their leaders didn't do anything about it. And not just the leaders who lived back then, but the leaders today are still saying we don't want to do anything about it. But certain people were able to live very fulfilling lives after the massacre. Others were not. The victims who should have been protected, they were in that latter group. They had their lives disrupted in an unimaginable way. They saw their upward mobility stunted, and they saw their descendants' mobility stunted. And I just want to remind people, usually whenever you hear the word massacre, there was a big massacre, right? Sometimes it's like maybe 20 people were killed in this so-called massacre. Over 300 people were killed in this Tulsa massacre. That is insane. It's hard to wrap your head around. These people, this community deserves justice even 100 years later, and they deserve to move on from this, and they need to.
Yeah, and they did this. It wasn't only envy. It was also because they wanted that land.
Yeah.
They wanted their property. And that was a big motivating factor. We're going to bring you updates as this develops. Melania Trump comes out against her husband, comes out against MAGA, comes out against the ultra-right Christian evangelicals. What's going on here? Because, see, she's pro-choice, like the Democrats. Hell of a thing. Let's go to it.
Individual freedom is a fundamental principle that I safeguard. Without a doubt, there is no room for compromise when it comes to this essential right that all women possess from birth: individual freedom. What does my body, my choice really mean?
She basically endorsed Kamala Harris. I mean, let's just go ahead and call it what it is. Trump is somewhere stewing right now. Put up the picture full mass. What you gonna do, Trump? What you gonna do, Donald? What you gonna do? You've been controlling this woman with all of your tactics, cheating on her openly. We know all about you know, your nickname, you like to be called Spanky, all that kind of stuff. That's embarrassing, man. This is her getting her voice back. And damn, this was, I mean, Melania. This is a beautiful moment in American politics. All right, former First Lady, Melania Trump, doubled down on her book's pro-choice rhetoric in a stunning new video directly contradicting former President Donald Trump's stated anti-abortion stance and declaring there can be no room for compromise. Melania has been going all out to promote the book, which comes out October 8th. Mrs. Trump posted black and white teaser videos on social media. Come on with the marketing team. Come on, marketing team. Come on in. There's more. In an excerpt obtained by The Guardian, Melania wrote, quote, "It is imperative to guarantee that women have autonomy in deciding their preference of having children based on their own convictions, free from any intervention or pressure from the government. Why should anyone other than the woman herself have the power to determine what she does with her own body? A woman's fundamental right of individual liberty to her own life grants her the authority to terminate her pregnancy if she wishes. End quote. She continued, restricting a woman's right to choose whether to terminate an unwanted pregnancy is the same as denying her control over her own body. I have carried this belief with me throughout my entire adult life. In the excerpt, she goes on to frame the issue as one of personal freedom. Trump has been trying to walk a line here between bragging about overturning Roe v. Wade and trying to reassure voters he won't sign a national abortion ban, while refusing to actually say he would veto one. He's afraid to say that, okay? He has come out against Florida's 6-week ban. Then within a day, he said, hey, I vote for it. I mean, man, this isn't going to go well for you at the country club, sir. All right, Yasmin, beautiful thing here. Thoughts?
Okay. Look, let me just say up front that I do not care what Melania says or thinks about anything. I never have. I'm not going to start now because I don't trust her or her motives and I don't respect her. But this is funny. When I first saw this video, I thought it was AI. I don't know why she's lit that way. I don't know why it's in black and white. Was that a branding decision because her book is also just black and white? I don't know why she's in a basement. This feels like she's just being petty at this point. I don't know if she's trying to stick it to her husband, who happens to have absolutely no respect for a woman's bodily autonomy, but I don't think she's doing this because she cares about the women of this country. If she carried this belief throughout her entire life, then why is this the first time I've heard about it? She was in the White House for 4 years as our first lady, and she said nothing as her husband trampled on women's rights across this country. I lost my rights because of her husband. I don't care about what she says about women's rights. Be best, Melania, please. Just be better. That's how I feel.
The true value here is the fact that Donald Trump is losing his ish right now. That is the value out of this. All right. Okay, it's going to throw him off his game. Watch. All right. Yasmin, always a pleasure to have you on the program. Tell people how they can follow you, check out your great work.
Yeah, you can find all my work over at the Rebel HQ YouTube channel. We just hit 1 million subscribers.
Yes,
thank you so much to all the viewers. Also, congratulations to you, Dr. Richey, on your show's success.
Thank you.
And you can follow me on Instagram at YazK with 5 Z's, YAZZZZZK.
Always a pleasure, dear sister, every single time. All right. Remember, take care of yourself, take care of each other, take care of the planet. Remember, the truth is always indisputable.